My parents sold my gaming PC behind my back for sister's shopping spree. So, I moved out and never looked back. I'm 22 male and I've been passionate about gaming and building PCs for as long as I can remember. Over the years, I've saved every penny from part-time jobs, freelance gigs, and holiday gifts to build my dream gaming rig, a $4,000 beast of a computer. For me, it wasn't just about gaming. It was about achieving something entirely my own, something I'd worked hard for without asking anyone for help. Growing up, I always felt like the afterthought in my family. My younger sister, who I'll call Maddie, was the golden child. She had expensive tastes and my parents catered to her every whim: designer clothes, private lessons, extravagant birthday parties. Meanwhile, I was expected to understand whenever money was tight, which usually translated to sacrificing something I wanted so Maddie could have her latest must-have item. Still, I never resented her. I just kept my head down and worked toward my goals. That all changed about 6 months ago. One Saturday, I came home after hanging out with friends and immediately noticed something was wrong. My gaming setup, which occupied a corner of my room, was gone. The desk was empty, no monitor, no tower, nothing. At first, I thought maybe my parents had moved it for some reason, but deep down, I had a sinking feeling that something wasn't right. I rushed downstairs to find my parents sitting in the living room, casually chatting like it was any other day. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Where's my computer?" My mom glanced at me and shrugged. "We sold it." I blinked, thinking I must have misheard her. "What do you mean you sold it?" She set down her coffee and sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Your sister needed new clothes for an event, and we didn't have the money. That computer was just sitting there, so we figured it was the best solution." I stared at her, disbelief turning into anger. "Are you serious? That computer wasn't just sitting there. I spent years saving for it. You had no right." "Don't take that tone with me," she interrupted. "We're your parents, and we did what we thought was best for the family. Your sister's event is important, and you can always save up for another computer." "Another computer?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Do you have any idea how much time and effort went into building that one? And what about my work? I use that PC for freelance jobs. You didn't even ask me." My dad finally chimed in, his tone dismissive. "It's done, and there's no point in arguing about it. Your sister needed help, and we stepped up. That's what family does." Family? The word felt like a slap in the face. Apparently, family only meant sacrificing for Maddie, while I was expected to fend for myself. I stormed back to my room, seething with anger. My gaming PC wasn't just a machine. It was a symbol of my independence and hard work. My parents had sold it without a second thought, all to fund Maddie's latest wardrobe splurge. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was how little they seemed to care. That night, I confronted Maddie. She was in her room, trying on one of her new designer dresses, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "Do you even know what they did to get you those clothes?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She glanced at me in the mirror, her smile unfazed. "What are you talking about?" "They sold my computer," I said, my voice tight. "My $4,000 gaming PC. Gone. For this." I gestured at the clothes scattered across her bed. Her expression didn't change. "So, you can always get another one. It's just a computer." "Do you even hear yourself?" I snapped. "That wasn't just a computer. It was years of work, saving every penny I could, and you don't even care." She rolled her eyes. "It's not my fault Mom and Dad decided to sell it. If you're mad, take it up with them." Her nonchalance was infuriating. "You could have said no," I said. "You didn't need all this. But you just took it, like you always do." She turned to face me, arms crossed. "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your stupid games, you'd understand what's important. I have an image to maintain. You're just sitting in your room playing video games." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Unreal," I muttered, walking out before I said something I'd regret. The entitlement, the complete lack of accountability. It was like talking to a brick wall. The days that followed were tense. My parents acted like nothing had happened, while Maddie paraded around in her new clothes, oblivious to the damage she'd caused. I tried to focus on my freelance work using an old laptop, but it was slow and inefficient, a far cry from my custom-built PC. Every time I struggled to meet a deadline or fix a crash, my frustration grew. Finally, I decided enough was enough. If my parents weren't going to respect me or my efforts, then I needed to take matters into my own hands. I started by gathering evidence. I had receipts, bank statements, and photos of my PC setup. Proof that the computer was mine, and that I had paid for every component. I also reached out to the person who bought the PC, explaining the situation. They were sympathetic but firm. They weren't willing to return it without compensation. Still, they provided me with a copy of the transaction, which showed that my parents had sold it for $1,200, a fraction of its value. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents one final time. I waited until dinner, sitting at the table with my parents while Maddie scrolled through her phone nearby. My mom started with her usual small talk, but I cut straight to the point. "I want my money back," I said, setting the proof of the sale on the table. My dad glanced at the papers and frowned. "What's this?" "It's proof that you sold my gaming PC for $1,200, I said firmly. "I built that computer with my own money, and I want it back." My mom sighed dramatically. "We've already talked about this. Your sister needed help, and we had no choice." "There was a choice," I snapped. "You could have asked me, but instead, you sold something that didn't belong to you. That's theft." My dad's eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare accuse us of stealing. We're your parents. Everything in this house belongs to us." "That's where you're wrong," I replied, my voice steady. "Legally, that computer was mine. I have receipts to prove it. You had no right to sell it, and if you don't give me my money back, I'll take legal action." My mom gasped, as if I'd just slapped her. "You wouldn't. Try me," I said. "You've pushed me too far. I've spent years being the afterthought in this family, sacrificing while you showered Maddie with everything she wanted." This was the last straw. Maddie, who had been quietly listening, finally chimed in. "Wow, you're really going to sue your own parents? Over a computer? That's pathetic." "No," I said, glaring at her. "What's pathetic is taking advantage of someone else's hard work and acting like it's no big deal. You don't get to guilt me for standing up for myself." My dad stood up, his face red with anger. "Fine. We'll give you the money. But don't expect any help from us in the future." I laughed bitterly. "Help? You've never helped me. Everything I've achieved, I did on my own. I don't need anything from you." The next day, my parents handed me $1,200 in cash, the exact amount they'd sold the PC for. I took it without a word, but I wasn't done yet. They thought this would make everything go away, but I had other plans. With the money in hand, I reached out to the buyer again. They agreed to sell the PC back to me for the same price, understanding how much it meant to me. Once I had my rig back, I made one final decision. It was time to leave. I started looking for apartments that same week, pooling my savings to secure a small place near my shop. Within a month, I had moved out, cutting ties with my family for good. I left behind nothing but a note. "I've put up with your selfishness for too long. I'm done being taken for granted. Don't contact me unless you're ready to apologize." Moving out was the best decision I've ever made. My new apartment wasn't fancy, but it was mine. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. There were no expectations, no manipulation, and no one treating me like a second-class citizen in my own family. I set up my gaming PC in a corner of the living room, and it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I'd lost. My parents tried to reach out a few weeks later, but their messages were more about guilt than genuine remorse. "You've really hurt your mother," one text read. "She just wanted to help your sister." Another said, "Family is about sacrifice. You need to learn that." I didn't respond. Sacrifice isn't a one-way street, and I was done bending over backward for people who didn't value me. Maddie didn't even bother reaching out. She probably thought I'd come crawling back eventually, but she underestimated just how serious I was about cutting ties. Over time, I found new ways to channel my frustration into productivity. I expanded my freelance work, built a better schedule for gaming, and even started streaming as a hobby. My audience grew, and I found a community of people who appreciated my skills and passion, something my family never did. One day, while scrolling through social media, I saw a post from Maddie bragging about a new designer purse. The caption read, "Thanks to my amazing parents for always supporting me." I rolled my eyes but kept scrolling. I didn't need to engage. The best revenge was living well, and I was doing just that. The final bit of satisfaction came a few months later, when I ran into an old family friend. They asked how I was doing, and casually mentioned that my parents were struggling financially. "Apparently, they overextended themselves buying things for your sister," they said. "They've been asking for help from everyone." I shrugged. "That's unfortunate," I said, not feeling the least bit sorry. They had made their choices, and now they were dealing with the consequences. Looking back, I'm grateful for what happened. Losing my PC was a wake-up call. Not just about my family's entitlement, but about my own worth. It taught me that sometimes cutting ties is the healthiest thing you can do. You can't force people to respect you, but you can respect yourself enough to walk away. To anyone dealing with entitled family members or feeling undervalued, take this as your sign. You deserve better. Stand up for yourself, even if it means leaving people behind.